Hello, welcome back to Master Your Mind. This module is entitled Neutralize It. This is the first pillar on the process to your self-mastery, and in particular, mastering your mind, which is where all your reality comes from. So let's dive right in. So, topic 1, the law of neutrality. So, everything, and I mean everything, starts off neutral. We are the ones who create and attach meaning to everything, and it's usually based on our experiences of the past. We learn to speak, write, and think in languages that are just symbols and a form of communication. We only viewed reality through our first language. We first viewed reality through our first language before we were taught the current means of human communication. Our first language is instinct, or what has been called intuition. Before we learn these languages and forms of communications, we only recreate the images that we see through our eyes and therefore our optic nerve, which receives the information or vibrations that the brain then decodes. So can you see that before we are given symbols and a way to process and articulate and communicate what we're experiencing, everything is just images and impulses or instinct or intuition. So I'm not intending this to be a science lesson, especially if you do not like science. But the reason I'm teaching you about this is because if you currently have suffering in the form of patterns in your mind and body, meaning the whole system, remember the brain is like an electrical circuit and the electricity is moving through our nervous system. That is the mind. It's not just the thoughts that we think, it's the emotions. The emotions are the most powerful of our cause and effect reality. So if you have suffering in the form of patterns in your mind and body, therefore your life, then your healing starts here. And that is an understanding that your mind and its programming or conditioning is responsible for your current reality. I'm going to say that again. We start here in taking responsibility for the patterns that exist in your mind, which is the only place that reality is created from. The law of neutrality is very important to know on our journey of self-discovery and later self-mastery, because we can learn to deprogram a lot of the mental and physical patterns that our subconscious mind is constantly causing in our realities. Maybe you're aware of this and you can see the patterns. You keep asking yourself, why did I end up here again? I've done the work. I've done the shadow work. I know why it is I'm doing. Well, these patterns are deeply ingrained, and we're gonna talk about this in detail. The law of, like I said, the law of neutrality is important to know because that is the antiquity. That's where it started. Everything started neutral. So if something has a meaning, it's because of us. Since everything starts out neutral, then that means that all that is necessary to return back to neutrality, is to remove and not create anything new. This is the good news, because as we will learn later on, it's our creations now that have made us sick and tired, and actually sick and tired of creating itself. We have, our imagination has been stolen by the entertainment industry that literally thinks and creates future outcomes that we've learned through these systematic paradigms and perspectives that have been shared in our entertainment. So that's best believe that's rooted deep in our subconscious. So why I'm explaining this, why I'm teaching this to you, is because what has been called karma is that which we have added to the law of neutrality. Let's see that in instant replay. What we call karma is really just what we've added to the law of neutrality. We create a charge, and then the charge has no ability to choose or think for itself. It has to follow the laws. That's what makes it a universal law. Once we've created the charge, the ball is rolling. And we'll talk about that later in the law of momentum. But for now, this is what karma is created by first our brain forming an intention, and then the release of energy following natural laws through our circuitry creates a charge that is now subject to the other natural laws of this universe regarding the energetic laws. This is worth 1,000,000 points if you're struggling from your own creations currently and your reality is seemingly automatic because your subconscious is mostly the captain at the wheel. Knowing this law of neutrality gives you a goal to reverse back to, because you're the only place that that charge originated and is now kept alive by you, by your meaning, by your belief system. And we're going to go into detail about this. But I want you to understand from this law of neutrality, where we are most concerned with or applying this to is how the energy flows through our circuitry once we've created paradigms, perspectives, and belief systems. It has no choice. It is no longer up to us, our will. It has no choice. It literally has to respond to the laws. So it's not personal. That's the good news. The karma is now created, like I said. So if you want to see the benefit of learning neutrality, then see that it is what we emote that causes the laws to take effect, like I just said, until they return back to neutral after dissipating in vibration. We're going to learn about the law of momentum, but eventually the momentum, after we've made a conscious decision to change, it doesn't automatic. Now, this is a glimpse into what we're going to talk about, but it doesn't automatically stop. Like when you cut off a toaster, when you're toasting bread or whatever you're toasting, the heating element stays lit for a little while. It's the same concept, that the momentum of what we previously created in our charges, our karma, is consistently going, even though we've used all of our will to interrupt these processes and change them. Don't get discouraged. It takes repetition, which is something else we're going to discuss. So what this means for anyone hearing or reading this is pretty important, because the dissipating in this teaching about the vibration dissipating is referring to the lessons. Every time a vibration dissipates, it's because we've had some type of lesson that our subconscious mind has actually brought into our lives through magnetism for us to transcend. You see, just like the universe is constantly expanding, so too the universe, which we actually are a mirror image of, it wants to expand and transcend these lower states of consciousness. So when a vibration is weakening, this is actually showing up in our life as painful lessons. And when it's strengthening, this is usually a lesson that makes us feel empowered or expanding. However, everything in this universe is following that law of expansion and contraction, or creation and destruction. I'm showing you the creation of it, and the destruction of it is really just, in this sense, to return back to a neutral place, to take back our charge that we created, because we now know better after dealing with the truth of the polarities. The polarities meaning what we created, we experience the opposite, because most people run from their creations. It depends on the emotional consistency of it, but the majority of people can't handle very strong emotions. We're not trained properly with emotions. And this is something we can discuss in the community, and I discuss in a lot of the courses I created. Emotional innocence, as I call it, is very important in our reality once we're awake and acting as authentic beings. So when a vibration is weakening, this is because of some lesson. However, you may now see we are the catalyst for a lot of unnecessary lessons, because we have created a hair trigger through our definitions of, adding on to the law of neutrality. We've created hair triggers for our emotions to start the process. Again, the energy will move because it's following the laws. I am not saying that we shouldn't have emotions. I am not demonizing emotions. On the contrary, I'm saying that we should start to emote more on purpose and aligned with our essential selves. We're going to get into that when we talk about identities and the shortcomings of what we were taught as children. But sticking with the emotions, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have emotions. Don't get me wrong. Emotions are very important. It's the causes is what I'm talking about, the triggers to our emotions. There's a lot of people that say we should just sit and feel all our emotions. That is BS. That's a belief system or bullshit, because like I just said, there's hair triggers created that every little thing that goes wrong creates all this energy moving through our system until we're so overwhelmed we can't process. Okay, so sitting with it and not addressing the causes of the triggers is not the right approach. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have emotions. I'm only showing the way our reality shows up currently, because the emotions are the vibrations that create our reality. It's up to you when you're done suffering your own creations. No one else's creations. They're your creations. So join me in the next lesson, where we will learn about another natural law and how it participates in creating our reality. I touched on it briefly. That law is indeed the law of momentum. But I want you to really wrap your head around this law of neutrality. When you are first incarnated into these meat sacks and you have this meaning-making machine that we're supposed to understand, and I'm teaching you now to take control of, and you will learn powerful processes going forward of how to do that, even in this short course. We have to understand that it's the vibrations in our emotions that are causing reality to happen. Feelings make the world go round, but it's the thoughts that are below the surface, like the glacier. When you just see the peak above the surface of the water, there's a huge glacier underneath. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about taking responsibility and accountability for what we're creating by going deep into the subconscious void and looking at some of the main programs that we learned and seeing that they're no longer beneficial. All right? Thank you. I'll see you in the next module.